Thanks Phoenix Lights for sponsoring this week's interview. The best design comes from the actual needs of users. Phoenix takes providing mobile lighting products with excellent performance as the goal and born for harsh environments as its mission. My goodness me, that has got a good connection with this week's episode because it is the harshest of environments. Never forget why you started and your mission can be accomplished. And don't forget, patrons can enjoy 10% off over at phoenixlight.co.uk, and all you lovely listeners can enjoy 5% off with the code T&T5. Yeah, pop over to www.phoenixlight.co.uk. Hello and welcome to the Tea and Trails podcast. My name is Gareth Waits.
And I'm Eddie Sutton. And this week we talked to Joe Bars. A little bit of history about how we sourced Joe. He was actually on a podcast with our long-term heroess, Lucy Gossage, and she said, I've met this guy, he's got a great story, you got to get him on the podcast. And so that is how we met up with Joe. We chatted for a long time, didn't we? He had such a story. He's got such a great backstory as well, but we only had an hour and a bit with him. But we talked all things about his journey into the Arctic Spine, his DNF in his first attempt, and then his, no spoilers here, but his successful second attempt, how he trained, how he fueled, his little adventures on the route. Gary, we both got a little bit excited about seeing ourselves on that. I mean,
you did. I didn't.
I thought it was a bit mutual. But yeah, I was definitely like, could I do this? I think perhaps as ever, he's got a little bit of rose-tinted goggles now as well about it, that he was like telling us the good bits. But what an adventure he had. Lots of highs and lows. I hope you enjoy our chat with Joe.
Thanks for joining us today, Joe. Wow, it took a few weeks to get this one over the line, so we really appreciate your time tonight. And a warm welcome from everybody at the Tea and Trails podcast. I'm really curious, 3 months roughly from the Arctic Spine. How's recovery been? Yeah, and how are you feeling now?
It's a very good question. My weight's back up, which is one angle on recovery. I started at a bit of a racing weight, but finished much under that. So recovery in that sense is going well. Physically, all pretty much there. I've got a couple of numb toes still, not because of the cold, but I think largely sort of circulatory and nerve related. I had some issues sleeping for the first 2 or 3 weeks afterwards. Yeah. I don't know if sort of UK spiners, I think, do also suffer from that, night sweats, and just had their circadian rhythm kicked in a different direction for a period of time. But that's all fine now. Yeah, that was all sort of done and dusted after about a month, and back into some reasonable training now, trying to find my way into some reasonable training again. So
are you in like epic calorie deficit? You said about losing weight there. Would you kind of track, I suppose you know.
This is Gary's dream. He's like, no, it's fine enough.
Yeah, you probably just can't keep up with the calories you need, can you?
No, you can't. So I was consuming about 7,000 calories a day on the Arctic Spine. It's difficult to say like how many I was burning. I wasn't wearing a heart rate monitor or anything like that. But yeah, I was definitely in a calorie deficit. I started at about 89 kilos, finished at about 87. It wasn't dramatic, but below 90 is like a good 89 is a good sort of race weight for me. Now I'm back up above 90 pretty comfortably. I'll leave it there.
And when did you go back to work? I'm just trying to kind of visualize the time scale from finishing the race to, did you give yourself a week off or something? Or
I didn't.
No.
The race finished. I'm just getting the calendar up now. Race finished on Monday the 10th of Feb.
Okay.
My first day back at work was Tuesday the 11th.
Stop it.
Yeah.
No.
In the office or like remote?
No, it was remote in Sweden from Stockholm Airport. Yeah, on Tuesday the 11th.
You must have been very good at your job on that day.
Yeah. Well, I'll let other people judge that when they listen to this. I think that's more just like my mentality of leave's precious.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Especially when you're largely sitting down for most of the day or in front of a computer. And I felt fine. I was going to be sitting there doing nothing all day otherwise, so I might as well work. That was my mentality anyway.
And did you have a medal around your neck as you were working, going, "Oh, sorry, this old thing, clang, clang"?
No, I didn't. The medal came on.
Presumably looked like quite threatening though. Like
Yeah.
Facially, bit of frostbite stuff going on.
I think okay, it didn't look too bad. I looked gaunt, I think, is
Yeah.
what people told
Yeah.
me. I was a much skinnier version of myself. But other than that, I don't think I looked too bad. I'd had a couple of nights of reasonable sleep under my belt then.
Yeah. Okay. Disappoints me a little bit. I was thinking of like Tom Cruise in Castaway.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks,
yeah.
not Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is always in the back.
Yeah, there is something in that in the skin. I didn't have any signs of frostbite this year, which I did last year. There is like a knock-on effect on your skin for sure, like dry skin.
Is it?
Your feet are very rarely aired for over a week, so your feet takes ages for your skin on your feet to recover, and for them to like get down to a normal size again. They're quite swollen, so there are a few sort of like lasting effects there from a skin perspective, but I didn't have like a brown frostbitten nose and tips of my ears or anything like that.
Do you ever fully recover from, I think was it the 2024 spine, and then you mentioned frostbite again? Do you ever fully recover, or is always some lasting effects?
Yeah, so it was my first attempt at the Arctic spine actually in 2024, where I finished after a day because I had some superficial frostbite in 3 of my fingers. My fingers were numb probably for 2 or 3 months after that. They didn't discolour, which is key. I mean, people that know more about this than I do, I think would probably say that once you've had frostbite or frost nip for the first time, your chances of getting it again or suffering from it again are increased. So there is some lasting damage there for sure. It's just about sort of managing that more carefully. But yeah, in terms of like day-to-day dexterity, I got that back after 2 or 3 months last year. Yeah.
I don't think there's enough talked about that because my big toes, both my big toes, I think I got frostnipping when I did the spine. And then when I go back and I've done other long, big races, it comes back with a vengeance. And if they get cold, the pain, you can almost feel the symptoms in it. Again, I don't know anything about it, but it's there forever now. Like I can hit my big toes like against the floor. Sorry, everybody that's listening. I went, my God, what's that noise? And I can't feel the tip of either of them very well. There's definitely been and I wasn't even in the Arctic. I was on the Pennine Way.
Yeah, I know. But I when it came to obviously the bulk of my training last winter was in the UK winter, even just going out on runs in the UK winter, which didn't really get particularly cold this year. Yeah, I was suffering, so I was having to manage that as well. Suffering more than I have done in the past, and I figured I've always had not amazing circulation and sort of Raynaud's type symptoms. But,
Wow, that's so common. The amount of people I meet, definitely as I get older, who suffer from Raynaud's. This is why, we do hear about the spine every year, and in this bubble, it just seems like that is all that's happening in the earth for that period of time.
Yeah.
The thought of being out on the Pennine Way for a week with freezing cold Raynaud's. No.
You can do it, Gary.
No, I couldn't do it, Hans. No. Well, before we get into the Arctic Spine Race, I'd love to know, and our listeners would love to know, a bit about you, Joe. What pulled you to running the mountains and the trails, and these big adventures?
My answer to that should start in fact, I played a lot of sport as a kid, and then through university, I think was pursuing playing cricket for a living whilst I was at uni and finishing uni down at Exeter, and sort of as I finished university realised that as a dream wasn't a realistic one anymore, having committed sort of my life really to playing cricket and pursuing cricket up to that point. It sort of developed a reaction in me that was like, right, okay, if it's not going to be that, then what else am I going to do with my time now? And obviously I've continued to go on and play sport, cricket in particular. I'm very, very passionate about it still, but it caused me to ask the question, well, what else is there out there? I've given so much time to this early part of my life. What else is there out there that I'm missing? And what laid the foundations for what's followed then is a friend that I was at university with called Gareth Davies, who we ended up doing a 4th year together at Exeter. He planted a seed during that year in my mind of going away and doing a form of adventure. Once we'd finished university, he'd spent a year abroad studying Spanish out in South America and met loads of weird and wonderful people down there, and we got in touch, or he was in touch with a guy that had just taken 2 recumbent tricycles called Wikes. They had removable sails on them. He'd just taken 2 of these across the Atacama.
This sounds terrifying.
Yeah, That's amazing. 2 Wikes he'd taken across the Atacama, and these were now sitting in Santiago unused. And Gareth thought, well, actually therein lies an opportunity. charity. And we then planned an expedition on these two things through South America, traveling south from Ushuaia, zigzagging our way up through Chile and Argentina, finishing the first chapter of the journey in Mendoza, having done, I think, maybe about 2,500 miles in just over 30 days, and parked up the Wikes, and we wanted to make an attempt on Aconcagua, Mount Aconcagua, highest mountain in the world outside the Himalayas. This was part of sort of the dual adventure, which was a proper, we'd set about raising a sum for charity, two charities that were pretty close to our hearts. We'd received sponsorship for this. It was a big deal to us at the time. It certainly still is, a big part of my life now. So anyway, we attempted a summit of Aconcagua that didn't materialise in the end. Even though we were on the mountain for a couple of weeks, and then weather went against us on the mountain despite a summit attempt. And then we sort of finished our Wike adventure down into Santiago, having sort of made it past the Andes and then down into Santiago. I would consider that to be my first sort of true adventure. It inspired me. I think more so, this gives you a bit of an insight into how my mind works as well, more so the failure on Aconcagua inspired me.
This was the thread I was going to pull out. I was like, what do they say on proper podcasts? Let's unpack that. What can you tell us a little bit more about how that happened? What happened there?
You enter the national park, you make one big sort of day up to base camp, which I think sits at, I'll just let someone else answer that. I can't remember the height of base camp. And then chunk of time at base camp, acclimatizing. You can summit some other peaks nearby, and then you start carrying your stuff up the mountain. We were carrying all of our own stuff, as opposed to, some people use donkeys actually to take their kit up to base camp, but then beyond that, it's all on you. So you start then taking your stuff up to Camp 1, 2, 3 and beyond. We'd started that process, and then some snow came in. It was sort of white out for a day, maybe two, and then the weather properly closed in, and there was seemingly sort of like a 24, 48 hour window where we could make a summit attempt, which we wanted to give a go. So we made our way up to Camp 3. I'm not exactly sure on the height that sits at, but typically you might have 3 or 4 days on your way up to that camp. So we dropped some stuff off at Camp 1 already. We made our way there, and then all the way up to Camp 3, slept for a night, and then made a summit attempt in the early hours of the next morning. And our progress was just too slow, to be honest. We were trudging through sort of thigh-deep snow for the majority of it. And Aconcagua was not a technical mountain. It's a trekking mountain, really, albeit a very high one, but it's not technical. And typically you should, so long as you're okay with the altitude, you should be able to manage that without too many complications. But yeah, the depth of the snow just meant our progress was very slow. And we had an awesome guide, a lady called Poppy, who was the first woman to ascend Aconcagua or make a winter ascent on Aconcagua. And later that day, she said, look, based on our current rate of progress, we're not going to make the summit in time to get back down safely. So I advised we turn around, and I'd already sort of decided in my mind, unfortunately, once she planted that seed, I was struggling a little bit. Right. And the two lads that I was with, they carried on for another couple hundred vertical meters and then turned around as well. I haven't really answered your question, Eddie, but on me stopping on my own actually before the other two lads did is part of the answer to your question. So I had a load of time on my own on the way back down to one of the camps where I sort of was just processing all of this myself. I was very emotional. The charity that I was raising money for on this X-Bed was a charity that my dad had founded in my mum's name. So it was really personal to me. She'd passed away some years earlier, and so you go through that whole process of thinking like you've let her down, you've let the family down, you've made these commitments that are out there in the public, you're asking people to sponsor you. And so I was pretty emotional about it, and I think my memory of that experience now has just sort of paved the way to continuing to try and take myself out of my comfort zone, and to be more in control of how I respond in tough situations and doing hard things.
You totally responded in totally the right way, though.
Yeah.
I bet it took some time for you to come to that reflection. And I always think you come back down. The top doesn't matter, does it? You come back down.
Yeah.
Everybody wants you back down, especially if you take a guide. But you respect such an amazing way to set you up on your adventure life, that you had this experience that perhaps if you had got to the top, that wouldn't be still with you now. So I think that all these things, when great tragedy or great disappointment and things happen, they're always for a reason, aren't they? There's always
Yeah, or you can always find purpose and reason in that situation, can't you?
Okay, so you come back down, you carry on the Wikes, is that right? Is
Yeah,
that
you're
what
right. Yeah,
they're called?
WHIKE, the Wikes. I can send some photos.
I would love a video.
Scroll
Have
far
you got a
enough back
video?
on my.
Is okay. I'm gonna scroll back on and
No,
see.
there
these
are some YouTube videos,
and just
actually.
make a note for my teenage children that are already talking about cat piers. If they mention a Wike, for me to go, absolutely not. You're not going on one of those.
We had maybe a day's worth of cycling back to Santiago from this pass, just on the entrance to the Aconcagua National Park, and then that was that. Got back to the UK, hit our target. You go into that wonderful process that I now know to be familiar. I didn't at the time of thinking, right, well, that's done. What am I going to do now? That's been a project for the last year.
The Monday mornings, that's what I call it. That's done.
Yeah, the Monday
next?
mornings.
Yeah.
Initially, actually, I think mainly into like the triathlon space for a couple of years and enjoying cycling. I guess there was a lot of cycling training in the build up to that South America trip, so I'd sort of become pretty passionate about the bike, and so had a few other sort of cycling adventures into triathlon. Around the edges of this was completely fallen in love with hill walking and mountaineering. We're talking about Scotland Eddie obviously before we started recording, but just having an appreciation for a landscape that I'd grown up in and around and not really taken advantage of. Just found a bit more of a passion for running marathons, and then into ultras, which the multi-day ultras felt a little bit more my pace than having to race a marathon, which is why I'm now sort of more inclined to do that, the multi-day or the longer stuff than the shorter stuff, as much as I still love running marathons. Not to any particular a good degree or particularly quickly, but I just get a lot of enjoyment from it.
It is interesting as an you're still a cricketer, but when you took your cricketing very seriously, that you love this endurance and this suffering, because my experience of cricketers is that cardio isn't something that they enjoy doing, and long days are like, where's the tea and the sit down?
Exactly. Yeah, maybe it's part of my rebellion to that in many ways.
But also, I think with cricket as well as a sport, I don't know what was your like specialism?
I was a bowler.
So your shoulders are done. Maybe your knees are not, like if you'd come from like all your youth, you'd been like rugby playing or something. You haven't perhaps ruined your body as much as you could have.
Have you ruined one half of your body? I'm curious.
The only sort of long-standing cricket-related problem that I have is in my right elbow,
and that's fine. We don't need that.
No,
really.
No, exactly. So a body that's largely good to go. Hopefully,
yeah, you're good to go. Your athlete age is like 15, not 50 or 500 like mine. Should we move on to the spine? Do you want to read the intro, Gary? It's got a word I don't want to say in there.
Kungsleden, is that the one? Well, I googled it.
Kungsleden.
It was I've got it here in front of me. I won't get it wrong. It's designed 20th century. It's not even like particularly old trail by the Swedish Tourist Board to establish a route through Sweden's stunning landscapes, making the mountains more accessible to hikers and adventurers. Now, I'm visualizing when I think of UK trails, you dip into a nice little community, you can get a coffee, there's a cafe there. Paint a picture. What is this trail like, Joe? So
I think in the summer, what you just described, it probably is quite like that. You've got this trail network that navigates the valleys, massive lakes, river complexes, a really strong hut network as well along the trail. So in the summer, I picture exactly what you described, that really strong sort of thriving community of people that love hiking. In the winter, it's slightly different prospect. It's desolate. You don't really see anyone. The huts are all closed, or the majority of the huts are closed. There isn't sort of one sentence that can describe this trail because it's so varied. You're covering such a vast landscape along it. You will go through sort of massive U-shaped glacial valleys that are just desolate. There's no vegetation on them at all, and then you'll ski through big woodlands and forest areas where there's obviously a lot of vegetation. You'll cross frozen lakes that are just vast in their size, the size of which we wouldn't recognise in the UK. Sometimes they're snow covered, sometimes they're not, and it's you're literally skiing on the ice.
Are you on on skis? I thought you were on rackets.
Snowshoes.
Okay.
You can choose. So
Okay.
give you a choice of either carrying cross-country skis or snowshoes. And they're really just a more efficient way of moving in the snow.
Can you have both and choose which one you're going to use?
You could do.
Depending on the terrain. Okay.
Yeah, you could do. I just took cross-country skis and then I had some spikes, some overboot spikes as well, which came in very handy because this year it was quite mild in the build-up to the race. It got a bit colder during the race. Even been some rain the day before the race as well. There wasn't a huge amount of snow cover, so a lot of the time you're crossing frozen rock or ice as well, and it's much more difficult to ski across those terrains, obviously. So the spikes came in pretty handy, and I would say that I reckon I maybe spent a third of my time on foot with spikes on my boots, and 2/3 with skis underfoot still. But there wasn't a huge amount of snow coverage, certainly not at the start of the race. As we got deeper into the race, it started to snow a bit more and we were getting into territory that just had greater snow covering.
The Montane Arctic Spine Race is, I don't even think calling it the brother or sister of the Spine Race, because it's not even on the same level. It's like there's absolutely nothing that is similar to it. It's true. Well, yeah, the only similarity is the distance, maybe the 293, and it's not too far off what the Spine is a bit. It's known for its extreme conditions with temperatures dropping as low as -35 and winds can be reaching up to 40 miles an hour. As you sort of touched on there, you are either cross-country skiing or you've got spikes on or you've got snow rackets on, but you're not carrying your stuff, are you? And I think this is probably one of the biggest challenges, sure, is that you're dragging a pulk around behind you. What does that look like and how does that feel? We sort of describe it as a sledge, I guess, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think that's the best way of describing it. Slightly longer, bigger version of a sledge that is enclosed as well, so you can sort of close and give an element of protection to the stuff that you put inside it. You did still have a choice on whether to use the pulk or not, so you could choose to carry the thing. I think there was one person that did that on the shorter Challenger route this year. There was one person that did it last year. So last year, only one distance of the race ran. It was the full Arctic Spine. No one finished it last year. There was reason to me sort of just giving this context. One of the guys that attempted it last year wearing a Bergen, he didn't this year. He carried a pulk but had like a day sack on his back instead. And I think the reasons for that were that he just found the weight bearing too taxing on his body.
What's the weight we're looking at?
I reckon my pulk was fully packed between 30 and 35 kilos, depending on how far into the race I was and how much food and fuel I had in there. That would be quite a weight to carry on your back. So I'd imagine that you pack lighter with that on your back.
Has any woman ever finished this race?
No, the first finishers were this year. All of the 5 finishers were male.
Sign me up, Montane. 35 kilos on my back, I can do that.
For sure. There were a lot of women on the start line this year. There was one last year. So last year there were about 15 starters, and you can choose to do it solo or in a team of up to 3. There was a woman in one of the teams last year, and number of starters this year was 30. There were a lot more women on the start line as well, proportionally.
When you do it as a team, have you got to is that a relay or is that like you just do it all together?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Lucy will be listening to this. Let's do this, Lucy.
Yeah. No, I was trying to tempt her. She interestingly, Lucy asked exactly the same question that you just asked.
Her and I.
Has a woman ever finished it?
Dangerous. This is dangerous.
The seed was definitely planted there, I think, for her. However, interestingly, what the guy that skied the shorter route with the Bergen this year, I don't know whether the shorter route was part of his thinking, but he was Scandinavian. He was
born up on skis. He's like
comfortable on skis, and so I think there would probably some sound logic that went into his thinking of using Bergen this year as well. I think he signed up to do the full one next year, so it'd be interesting to see if he uses a Bergen for that as well.
What have you got in the pulk that was weighing, like, because this is so it's described as like a self-sufficient race. So are you carrying your whole like fuel for the journey? Stove, you've literally got to fuel yourself for
everything. Everything.
Okay.
You've got everything that you need to survive. All of your food. You might carry a bit of water on you, but then you're melting snow for water once you're on the trail. Your fuel, stove, tent. I mean, the kit list is endless. I would say the weightier items are your food, your fuel, and your tent. possibly.
How do they vet you though, Joe? If I could enter this race,
Yeah.
Gary, don't.
Well, no,
I've seen you cold on the northern moors.
bit sketchy with a map and compass. Could I put a tent up in 40-mile-an-hour winds, make a cup of tea when it's freezing cold in the dark?
Exactly, yeah.
How do they make sure people are safe on this trail? Is there any system?
Yeah, there is. I think there's a few different ways to answer that question. So last year, everyone that was on the start line would have had an interview with Phil Hayday Brown, the race director and founder, and that was part of the vetting process. As part of the application, in the same way that I think you do for the UK Spine, you have to state your experience. This year, which didn't happen last year, there was a sort of a 2 or 3 day training package that was put on pre-race that helped to give people that were not as confident the skills to operate in that environment. And then on race briefing day, it takes on a completely different means for what we'd understand a briefing to be or race registration to be, because it takes a day to do. As part of that, you'll do some assessments. So you'll do a navigation assessment.
Oh, I'll be rumbled. That'll be it.
They'll watch you put up your tent, get your sleeping system in your tent, and get a brew on. So they test you across those elements to see if there's any remedial that's needed or whether you're completely incompetent.
Joe, were you like, hold my mug, watch everyone, this is how it's done?
I wasn't. I was as nervous.
Even someone with your experience, I bet you found that just people watching you.
You say that, Eddie, like with all my experience. I was only in this race for a day last year, and whilst I tried to add to that experience in the interim, I was as nervous as soon as you got someone watching you doing this stuff as I was last year, I think. So
I got so nervous at Spine Kit Check where you just have to pull the coordinates up on your handheld. I was like, you just have to turn it on, and I was like shaking, going, I can do this. I can't imagine how you must feel.
You don't even get the nav test isn't even on your handheld either. It's map and compass.
And is that how you navigated? Was it map and compass or?
No, I used.
Do you want us to return? Shall I ask that question again? And you go, yeah, the whole way. I just.
I used. I'd love to say that, but no, I used my handheld GPS. I still think I use my map every day, but that was more for
looking what's
GPS
coming.
It's largely featureless, isn't it? And so on a map, you can get a lay of the ground a lot better. Yeah, you can see what's coming. You can do map to ground if you're not quite sure. I think there's also still a lack of trust sometimes in GPS devices. So I always prefer to then just see what it looks like on a map and just to sense check.
How do you train for something like this? And you trained for it twice.
I was very sort of typical me for first time round in terms of training for a big event like this, which was be a bit complacent. From the start, I had a belief that I could cover the distance and the elevation. So first time round, I focused more on kit familiarization, making sure I could, cross country ski. I'd always done some downhill skiing, but could I cross country ski? Can I administer the kit in the right way and things like that? And so I just sort of bumbled through physical training for the first one. I continued to focus on getting a lot of miles in my legs, probably too soon. I think he would argue it's definitely too soon to the start of the race. I started working with a guy called Ed Norman I'd met through the Royal Marines, and he started to give me a bit more focused gym-based training as well as just sort of the running and time in leg.
Sorry to interrupt you when you're telling us about this, but are you doing any running in this race with the POC? Can you actually run with it?
Yeah, you can do if you're on foot, and sometimes you can skiing, cross-country skiing, if you're going at a reasonable pace along the flat. So I'd say when you get a bit of pace on the cross-country skis, you're replicating a bit more of a shuffle on foot. Did quite a lot of ski erg stuff the first time round again, but that was probably my own naivety as well a little bit. Whereas this time round, I had 12-month proper run-in. It's still focused on building volume in the same way you'd train for an ultramarathon on foot. I had some focused sort of training efforts in the hills as well in the build-up, and I did a lot more gym-based stuff. So I was doing a lot of like lower body strength and conditioning, a lot of sled work.
Did you do? I see people years ago when I lived in London, people dragging tires.
I know what you're going to ask. No.
Yeah. Did you do any of that?
No.
Why wouldn't you? Because that would be my go-to. Would be like drag the tire. Ramage Park, look, Hench.
Primrose Hill.
Yeah, top off, Gary. Just
Oh, no. That's not allowed.
I didn't.
But no, and was that like, that's just so unrealistic, that's too heavy, or?
No, it was perfect in many ways. I just didn't have, and I could have solved this very easily, but I just didn't have the access to a
Tyre.
tyre.
You're going to say I didn't have a tyre. I'm sure you could get one on Amazon.
You could do so easily, yeah, you could do. But we replicated that in different ways. So you can replicate that by carrying weight on your back.
Does it feel the same, like dragging the pulk? Does it feel like
you've got a harness on, and then you've got what's called a fixed tracer, which is some metal poles, like tent pole looking things that connect your harness to your pulk. Sometimes you can get a soft tracer, so it might be a piece of rope that's connecting your harness to the pulk, but this was fixed, so it constantly keeps the pulk behind you at a certain distance and in line with you. So you can replicate pulling the pulk by having some weight in your back. So a lot of the work that I was doing in the hills or running would be weight bearing, and then you can replicate the strain on your lower body and your cardiovascular system by pushing a sled a lot and pulling a sled a lot.
Did you enjoy the training? I seduced by these big adventures. They look phenomenal, but I still feel I'm a runner, so there's a bit of resistance to enter and train for one. Yeah. Did you enjoy the whole process?
I did. I did really enjoy it, because it was this year was very different to how I've trained for anything, and I was taking it much more seriously, largely because of the failure last year, than I have done for anything in the past. And so I really enjoyed the process. I was just much better organised. So in terms of sort of the time in the hills as well that I mentioned earlier. So I had a couple of weeks in Scotland, I had a week in Austria, and so those were sort of interim milestones in my training program that kept me incentivized and constantly looking forward.
Did you have a coach, Joe, or did you work out your plan yourself?
I used a good mate of mine, Ed Norman.
You used him for your like cardiovascular stuff as well.
That was everything really. Less on the cross country skiing side of things. I did take some tuition on that up in Scotland actually last year, and then out in Austria this year. But to be honest, at the pace that we're going, a real entry level sort of cross country skiing is fine.
Did you have any moments when you got a bit of a downhill chug on with that weight behind you? Was that?
It was a nightmare. It was really, really, really hard.
Because cross-country skiing downhill is terrifying. I can't imagine having a weight coming down behind you.
Yeah, it virtually impossible, to be honest. Yeah. And I'm sure that the Scandinavians, those that sort of grew up on cross-country skis, would argue differently, but it was virtually impossible to ski downhill, especially on some of the gradients of the slopes that we were skiing down, with the pulk pushing you down at the same time. So I persevered for the first few days skiing downhill, and I crashed so many times. It broke part of the tracer. A couple of my crashes started to break some of the kit. So after that, I was just like, I'm not doing this anymore. So skis would come off at the top and I would trudge down, and it was really demoralizing. What reassured me was that I ended up skiing the last probably 2 or 3 days of the race with another racer. We stayed sort of side by side for the last couple of days, I think it was. And he was Norwegian, same principles, sort of grown up cross-country skiing. He is very, very proficient, much more efficient than I was on the flat ground. And even when it came to the downhills for him, he still had a technique, but he would detach himself from his pulk, and he'd basically like surf his pulk down these slopes, which got him down as quickly and slightly safe.
Yeah, by the time you've done all that.
Sledge it down, yeah.
We could go into all the deets and, checkpoint 1, I think Leaf was in the lead.
That's right.
But for context, checkpoint 1 isn't 10k from the start, is it? It's a few days, if I'm right.
Yeah, afternoon of the third day, I think I reached checkpoint 1. For the first day, you see a lot of people around you. Second day, less so, maybe 2 or 3 people. I was going with another racer from last year called Barclay for much of the afternoon of the second day. And then there was sort of a mass or a blanket, like everyone beds down for the night because a few people had fallen through ice in one of the lakes.
No, Joe, no. This is not good times.
The weather wasn't great. So there was this sort of blanket message that went out on the tracker. So everyone that's going through this area, bed down for the night and then start again tomorrow, and make sure you go through this area with someone. Checkpoint 1 we didn't reach until the afternoon of the third day. Yeah.
And how much sleep have you had then up until checkpoint 1?
So I'd slept, I think, a couple of hours on night 1. And then the second night, I actually slept quite a bit. Unfortunately, I was alongside Barclay, one of the people that fell through the ice. When that happened, you just had to think about like safety and survival as opposed to progressing. So our tents were pitched and we were just sort of recovering there and sort of just doing our thing to recover from that for a little while before they issued then a blanket message, which then, you could rest assured that no one else was moving or gaining an advantage on you. So that was actually quite a long night's sleep then in the end, maybe 8 hours or so. Second night, third day, pretty well refreshed, ready to then start tackling it again.
Can I just touch on Barclay falling through the ice? Can we just make sure he's okay? And did you have to pull him out? And
well, we both went through. So he was a bit ahead of I was, a bit further ahead from me, and just after I fell through. And I think just to reassure listeners that are thinking about doing this next year, this is completely unheard of for this time of year. Obviously, not now, but it is typically completely unheard of for this time of year. You're normally crossing across lakes and rivers that have meters worth of ice. And we were crossing this lake just as it merged back into a river, and there was just an area of weakness on the ice. Yeah, it just fell straight in, really, up to about sort of my nipples, and then was able to get myself out. And as I got myself out, I found Barclay on the riverbank, having just gone in as well. So we were both fine quite quickly after that. We maintained our core body temperature until we were able to, because we were largely just climbing the riverbank, so our heart rates were spiking. And then to put your tent up is it spikes your heart rate again, because you've got to dig down through snow. Very easy to assemble sort of little one-man tents.
I'm visualizing a real traumatic experience, Joe, but what was the reality of it? Was it just complete high pressure?
It was, to be honest, because up until that point, it was still very hard 2 days into this adventure, but it was going as expected. I was familiar with the terrain. I hadn't encountered anything that was not what I'd expected so far. And then when that happened, I was sort of like, well, blimey, is this, could this be it?
Could this happen again?
Something
Yeah.
out of my control. But then seeing someone else, Barclay, had also been through, really helped, because it sort of just kicked me back into action. It was like, right, this is about just making sure we're both okay. Once you realise that you're going to be fine, then you start thinking about the race again. But that was probably like the lowest moment, probably, when all sorts of thoughts were running through my head.
Are you thinking about like a race though? I think you came into checkpoint 2, second place.
Yeah.
Are you racing, or is it an adventure? I need to complete this.
My goal for the year was to stay in it longer than day 1, which is what I'd achieved last year. Beyond that, I wanted to complete the race, and just to be able to say that, not to say actually, but just to have the satisfaction of having done it. The deeper I got into the race, I couldn't help myself but think about race positioning and things like that. I think you might have watched, Gary, the video of me coming into checkpoint 2, where I think I wasn't really clear on my race position, and I couldn't believe that a few other people hadn't been through before me. But throughout that day, I was thinking about who was ahead of me, I feel as though I'm going really well here, why am I not catching people, things like that.
Yeah.
So I'll be lying if I said I didn't try and race it. It was constantly on my mind about race positioning after a few days, and then those feelings probably went away towards the back end once I was with Ulf.
So when did you buddy up with Ulf?
2 days out maybe from the finish line. Actually, no, we did 2 nights, so maybe it's three days out from the finish line. We'd sort of gone through a couple of days of exchanging places in the night whenever each of us needed to sleep, and then I caught up with him sort of for the final time at checkpoint 3. I then passed him through checkpoint 3 because he'd chosen to sleep, and then I made a bit of a nav error. He caught me back up again and overtook me. And then later that day, we sort of crossed paths again, and then we were just together for the duration. So we still had an eye on sort of how people were doing behind us, how Leaf was doing in front of us. But at that point, there were only 5 of us left in the race. So the support teams, and this should have been part of my answer to the safety question earlier, there are a lot of support staff and roaming medics as well. They were all then highly focused on this section of the race where all the racers were. So you had an understanding of where everyone was, and you could just sort sort of focus on getting the job done without worrying about losing your place or whatever. Not that that really mattered at that point. It was just about finishing by then, I think.
Did you have a chat with Ulf? We're going to stay together, or it was just this unspoken?
It was unspoken, really. I think we offered to each other the fact that if you're feeling really good here, you just crack on. You do your own thing, because we knew that we were each gonna continue to go through waves of tiredness and lacking energy and things like that. So we were both transparent with each other on that front. But then I think that probably did lead to a bit of a conversation, which was like, actually, no, the pace that we were going is good for me. And part of my motivation for doing this type of thing is I think, solitude and learning how to tackle these things on your own is sometimes a really healthy thing. And I really enjoy sort of facing into a period of solitude. But after 4 or 5 days,
that's enough solitude.
Yeah, I reached that conclusion myself. And so it was good to have some company in the end.
You mentioned about your lows. Yeah. Any particular high points?
That's a really good question. I haven't thought about that much.
Joe, pull out the good stuff.
I love.
Come on.
Yeah, I definitely do have an answer. The sunsets and the sunrises were staggering. I got into a routine in the end where you're trying to maximize daylight hours, really, because there's not that long. And I got into a bit of a routine in the end where I was targeting sleeping between sort of 2 and 3 hours a night, but normally I'd be up and on the move before sunrise, and then I'd always stop for a brew for sunrise, and I couldn't talk to any particular one of those, but those were definite highs. The sunrise, just the size of the skies are just phenomenal. Saw the northern lights pretty much every night.
Oh my goodness me.
And the majority of the time, as I said, I was on my own for both of those experiences, the sunrises and the northern lights. And I mean, that always causes me to think, like, of the people in your life that you'd love to be sharing those moments with, or that you wish could see what you're seeing, and sort of provokes all sorts of thoughts and emotions. So those are always high points. In terms of like shared high points, getting into each checkpoint was always a real highlight, because
that felt so good.
But it did personally. But that feeling was mainly driven by the people that were welcoming you into these checkpoints. It's not a massive race. The support staff in numbers probably don't quite match the number of racers, but it's not far off. There'd be 15, 20 support staff, including the medics. Obviously, there's a really long build up to a racer arriving at the checkpoint, because they're tracking you throughout the day. This is a long event. The welcome I got at every single checkpoint, including some arriving in the early hours of the morning, was phenomenal. And those memories would definitely stick with me. The conversations that you have, and a lot of these support staff were there last year as well, so you built a relationship with them as well. So yeah, I think I'll leave my answer to the highs there.
My first time I ever met Gary in person was he was at Middleton checkpoint. Highlight of my life, highlight of the race, and he came out, like, jogged out. He probably regretted jogging that mile out, because then I whined all the way about how far it was to the checkpoint. But him coming out and meeting me and then taking me into this checkpoint, like I always say to people doing these mega races, was like, you arrive at those checkpoints like a dead person, like you are done, you are cooked. And then just by the warmth of, like, the minute you walk in, and there's humanity and there's love and there's kindness, and Gary's undoing my laces or whatever, like that little bit is like that love is like, you can't recreate that, and you don't get that feeling in your like day to day of like, these people are just out here, they're waiting for me. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning, and they're like heating up a lasagna. But
the people in the checkpoint, they, another day they'll be towing the line, so they totally get it. They totally get it.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
We've hardly, like, there's so many questions. You need to write a book, Joe. There are so many questions. Or maybe just come up, we'll meet in Scotland, and we'll go for the day and I just ask you all the questions. Because I would like to, like, the kit, so many questions. The way you've answered the questions as well as how did it feel to finish that? And can you even describe finishing? It was 8 days, 15 hours, 19 minutes. How does it feel to finish something like that?
Obviously very satisfying, but I was also exhausted at the same time. And so I think part of my strategy in anything like this is always visualizing what it's going to be like to finish it and complete it. And I think anchoring in those images, it really helps me. And so I pictured throughout the race what it was going to be like to finish, and you picture the various emotions and things like that. And that never really plays out in reality, because I finished at like 11 o'clock at night or midnight or something.
Presumably there's no family, there's nothing. It's not like it's
no, and this is no slight on my family.
No,
right?
no. But you're in the middle. You've chosen to do a race that, like, the finish line is not Stonehenge.
Exactly. But there's this spine family there welcoming you in. That was awesome. The last afternoon and evening, was probably one of the hardest parts of the race. Well, I think both Ulf and I would say that, but I think Leif said it as well when I spoke to him once we finished. On a map, you see this section of the trail that you've still got left to do, and you see a little bit more elevation, and you think, oh, that's nothing based on what we've done so far. We'll be finishing, this time on this evening, just in time for dinner or whatever. We made this significant climb up to a pass to then get down into a valley that we felt was just going to be a gentle sort of decline down then into the main ski resort town of Hemavan, where we were finishing. And as we got to the top of this climb, the weather started to close in a little bit, or the wind in particular. And for the first time in the race, really, I think I literally had everything in my bag, layers wise on. The wind was like howling down this valley. It was quite sketchy in terms of we're on this massive plateau. If the wind knocks you over with the weight of your polk, then it's pretty precarious. But then the wind was blowing up this valley, so you didn't benefit from the downhill whatsoever. And it was just so tormenting for quite a long time. We generally thought we were going to be back in time for dinner at one point during that day, like back in time for 6-7 o'clock in the evening. We didn't get back until between 11 and 12. When you hit the ski resort, the trail, rather than taking you down a groomed slope and then along and into the town, took you along sort of the side of this mountain that was just up and down, completely ungroomed. You're trawling through like knee thigh deep snow in cross country skis or without them, dragging this polk, and it took forever. Eddie, to answer your question, by the time I got in, I was actually really irritated.
Really?
Take your race.
But immense like satisfaction, obviously, and just like, just really.
Thank God I don't need to do that again. I'm done. Goodbye, polk. Would you do it again, Joe?
I would do something like this again. I don't know. I feel I've scratched the Arctic spine itch for now, and there might be some other cold weather adventures out there waiting for me. But I've given 18 months of my life to pursuing that now. So there might be some other adventures on the horizon in that same sort of environment, but perhaps not the Arctic spine just for now. But who knows what the future holds.
Yeah, I like that. Have you got anything else planned for this year?
I'm doing a UTMB event in Verbier in July.
Nice.
Which I signed up to the night before the Arctic spine started, just in case it went pear-shaped again, and I needed something to look forward to. So I've got that, and then I'm doing San Sebastian Marathon in November. That's it for, to tell a lie. So those are two races that I'm doing, day races. Hopefully the Verbier one will be done in a day. I'm going bikepacking on Friday in Italy for a week, which will give me a bit of an adventure fix for the foreseeable, but no more sort of like adventure races on the horizon for this year. And haven't started thinking about next year just yet.
Is there anything on your bucket list that you're like, how do you beat that for like a bucket list adventure race?
Summiting Mount Aconcagua successfully is definitely on the bucket list.
Okay,
still.
Let's get on with that.
So that needs to be done. Beyond that, I'd love to keep doing some like high altitude mountaineering. I think keep ticking off the Munros as well.
How many Munros are you on?
I think I'm like 26 in.
Yeah, I too am pitifully embarrassingly number of Mun. But they're hard to collect. You have to be really focused on like. You do. I did 3 at the weekend and it took me all day.
You do. I think alongside a day job as well, it's tricky. But no other real sort of like bucket list thoughts other than righting wrongs of the past.
Oh my God. That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
Should we do the quick 5? Well, we've got about 8 actually, Joe.
I know. Sorry, I've been. Just maybe I'll just delete.
Oh no,
that.
it's fine. It's okay. Oh no, it's fine.
I was just no, because it's 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Gary hates it when I touch the screen. I'm just going to delete that one at the bottom too. Can't be running. How do you pass the day off? Because the top, the 5 are good. That's good.
Okay.
Gary and I have arguments as you're talking because we type and I delete in the script as you're talking.
We share.
I realise it's all about me behind my back.
Gary, yeah, we are. We're chatting, and Gary goes nuts because he's like, "Stop messing with it."
We share the Excel file, and Eddie changes stuff, and it just everything.
And I change the font and the size and
the typeface. It's horrendous. Changes the colour. It's a nightmare. Okay, quick five time, Joe. Common with spine races to name their backpack, but yeah, did you name your pulk or any piece of your equipment?
I didn't know.
Did you not have? I'd have had Deborah behind me. Deborah, you are causing me all sorts of problems. Come on, Debs.
I didn't name it, but I did talk to it, especially when we're going downhill, and it was close to throwing it off mountainsides. But I didn't name it.
How did your kit hold up? You know, everything is pushed to the extreme. Did it all finish and was still working, or was it literally hanging on?
It held up really well. Completely user error really, because it happened after a crash, but I got quite a big tear 2 days before the end in my salopettes, and was able to administer that ish, but that was again, that was my own fault, no fault of the kits. I mentioned earlier, again, as part of the crashes, the tracer on the Polk broke. Fortunately, you're carrying most stuff. You know, I'm carrying spare carabiners and a Leatherman and things like that, so you can fix it, and was helped at one of the checkpoints by John Bamber to fix my
good old John.
to fix my tracer, which I'm grateful for. But other than that, kit held up fine, which I was really happy about, because I was nervous about how I used my kit this year, in particular in light of sort of like the frostnet last year. Okay,
you are just settling down. You got a nice sunset. You got the jet boil on. Do you remember? Were you fussy? Eddie would be all over a certain branded tea bag. Yeah. Did you have a certain branded tea bag as your brew of choice at night?
I had coffee in the morning, and I had Taylor's coffee bags as my
classic.
For my coffee. I either would have soup or hot chocolate as my evening drink of choice.
I like hot chocolate.
So there was no tea. So you lied to us about making the brew, basically.
Sorry, I said
brew. On a podcast called Tea and Trails, and you're now going to say, I did the Arctic for 8 days and I did not have a cup of tea.
I didn't think about that answer properly. I used generically for making a hot.
Yeah, I know. Yes, I'm married to a military man.
It was all going so well.
At least had tea bags. He'd have put 2 tea bags in.
So yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Coffee,
soup, coffee, hot chocolate, and trails.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's all hot liquid. Let's face it. You'd be now, you couldn't care less. You just want a hot drink. I'm with you.
Did you have any luxury items in your pulk? And if you didn't have an item, do you think, if I did it again, maybe I'd carry this next time?
So definitely one luxury item, although I don't know, it's sort of borderline because you need it as well. But I had, have you heard of do you know the Ritter Sport chocolate?
Oh, yeah.
Do we know it? Yeah.
Of course you do. I had a bar of that every day. I had rum and raisin, marzipan, nougat. Yeah, I had a whole manner of different flavours, but I look forward to that every single day. Other luxury, I had a silk sleeping bag liner, which was really nice as well. But again, a sleeping bag liner was a mandatory bit of kit.
Is there anything you'd take next time? Not next time, but maybe, someone's listening and is doing this, or if you're going again, is there anything that you would be like, I wish I'd taken those? Did you have earphones with you?
Yeah, I did. I didn't listen to any music. I listened to music once, and it was in the early hours of the morning before I approached checkpoint 2, and it was more just a little bit to wake me up, but also I think I thought that I was going to get there sooner than I did, and I was a bit annoyed, and so I just chucked some tunes on the phone, and I don't even think I used headphones that time. I think my phone just went in the hood of my jacket.
So if it wasn't windy, Joe, would it have just been pin drop silent?
Yeah, it was at times. Yeah, when it wasn't windy, you would hear these birds called ptarmigans. I don't know if you've heard or come across them before. They're like a white pigeon-sized bird, and they make quite a funny call at all times of the day. So normally, if it was silent, you're probably not too long away from hearing a ptarmigan.
You've got to give us a description.
No,
you're going to have to make the noise.
No,
that's going to be all real. Come on.
I mean, picture like the sound that you'd expect a turkey to make.
That'll be our challenge, Eddie.
It's a
When
bit like that.
when we record the episode on Wednesday, we'll do it.
Okay, the sound of, what was the name of the bird? Let me write it down. Ptarmigan.
Ptarmigan.
There was definitely periods of real silence as well, which was bliss.
Also, from my very limited cross-country skiing experience, listening to the snow when you're pulling something and you're walking in snow or something it's not only quite meditative, but also you need to hear the sound as well, I guess, of the pulk moving behind you. And
yeah, it gives you that assurance. Funnily enough, so ice is quite loud when you're walking across ice, not necessarily when you're walking across it, but it makes a noise when you're walking across a big lake, so you can hear it like creaking and moving, which is fun when you're crossing it at night.
That does not sound fun.
This is the thing. Like everything else you said, the frostbite. Like I love the sound of that ice.
I think typically it's just not a thing, because you see the stakes frozen into the ice that mark out the safe passage. There's a load of snow, and so no risk. It's just slightly different this year. To very quickly answer your question, Eddie, I would take a pair of Gore-Tex not high heeled. What do I mean? I've got an ankle on them, walking shoes or walking trainers, only because this year, because of the terrain that I described, I ended up walking a lot. And whilst a cross-country ski boot is like a walking boot, typically you haven't
imagine walking a long way in that.
You haven't worn them in a way that you're going to be walking in them. You've worn them into skiing, and so I did get quite a lot of like hot spots on my feet, and my heel pads and stuff bruised quite a lot. Whereas Leaf had packed a pair of trainers, and he walked in those. So I think just Gore-Tex to make sure that the snow's not going to melt and make your feet wet, and then just I don't know why I'm struggling to describe this, but like an ankle on them.
Not like a high heel, as you initially said. We can go with that.
So yeah, shoes or boots that are comfortable walking in would be something to add that might not be on the mandatory kit list. They're making changes to the kit list next year for like snow spikes and things like that.
You're in your hotel room night before the race. Somebody has conveniently left one of those dodgy fire sticks. So you've got every TV channel at your disposal. What's going to be your guilty TV pleasure? What are you going to watch?
Alan Partridge.
Oh, classic.
Oh, Gary loves Alan Partridge, Joe.
Really? I'm really happy I said that now. I've been watching Alan Partridge this time recently, probably that, or just some feel-good stuff like Sean Locke on 8 out of 10 Cats.
I was just talking about Sean Locke. If there was
you would be so happy in your hotel room.
It's a tragedy he's not with us anymore, but if there was one person I wish I'd seen live doing comedy, it would have been Sean Locke. I think they're doing... I'm sure there's some loud whispers about a new Alan Partridge. So
is there? Right.
Fingers crossed. Not that I'm privy to any of this. I think I've watched it on some TV programme.
My type of humour. So yeah, I think that really good question though. Instagram
story music time, Joe. Yeah, every week we share the podcast over on Instagram. You get the choice of the song. What's it going to be?
It's going to be Thunderstruck by AC/DC. I had some options. I have some pretty niche music listening habits for when I think initially it was like,
we all do, Joe. We don't
listen
have
to
to
on the trail. I listen to some pretty heavy stuff normally, which may not be Instagram stories.
How heavy? No, we're okay. I like heavy metal anyway. If that's where you go.
I like quite a lot of like new metal as well. And
this is fantastic.
God, you and Gary, you need to let's set up a new.
Been off Scotland. We'll go and do a little jog.
I think
that's lyrical about Alan Partridge.
And I'd be like,
stopping with you on the way
musical.
up, Gary. But yeah, Thunderstruck AC/DC is my choice.
Perfect. Fantastic.
Dallas Cowgirls, you're not going to know. You're not going to watch that. Yeah, you have, Joe. Let's leave it there. You got one more minute of your time, Joe, because we didn't ask you in the quick five of your workout of the week. So every week we ask our guest, what was your favourite workout in preparing for this event, or just your favourite workout? And then everybody tries to recreate it the week that you're on the show, and then we share the deets in our Strava club. Have you got a favourite workout?
We really? That's, okay, I didn't know that background to it.
Oh, hello.
When you asked me the question, I was thinking about what my favourite workout, and it is pretty vanilla to be honest. But I've recently moved down into a place in Hampton Wick in southwest London, which is a stone's throw from Bushy Park and also only 10 minutes from Richmond Park. So I'm really blessed in terms of running territory and running locations in London. I think my favourite workout of the week is where I've got no real plan and I go out to run in Bushy Park and I will run for however long or at whatever pace I feel like running. Ideally, it's after work in the evening, sun setting. Yeah, some people might call those junk miles, but I love them. So I think that would be mine. But I appreciate that doesn't give you
No, it's got to be
that with listeners.
No, I can. I've already named the workout. Don't worry. When you see it, it's done. I love it. And I love that every time we ask this, that everybody's response tells us a little bit about the person and it sort of sums up the character. And then when we've only like touched it, we've been chatting to you, well, a little bit longer than we planned. I love that. Really, I think sums up our chat as well of like where this sport fits in your life, how you see it in life, and that not every workout has to be a workout and it doesn't have to be redlining and it doesn't have to be hero. Sometimes the best ones are where we just take that moment to breathe and enjoy. Joe, we've used up so much of your time. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Can we invite you on again to come and talk about all the kit and everything? Because I've got so many questions.
Yeah,
but
cool.
Also good luck with that. Is amazing. A story of 2024, not going the way you planned, but coming back and finishing incredible. What an incredible, inspiring story. And just a little glimpse of what that sort of race is like. I'm sure loads of people running along listening to this podcast will be like, sign me up when you see the figures go through the roof. What time of year is it held? It's just after is it like February?
Yeah, so it's about a month after the spine.
Yeah, okay. So
entries are open. It's not cheap though. It's not cheap.
Oh.
No,
it's an investment race. So perhaps if you are thinking you need to start dropping it into conversations with your nearest and dearest for the next few years.
It's like, I'm not going to take shots at a race organizer because we've got a little bit of experience with the Teen Trails Ultra. Yes, it is expensive, but you've got to put that into context because where this race is and you've got to keep these people safe. So
100%, yeah, I'd agree with that. They make it easier for you as well. You can pay in installments. I think that was something they did last year. I'd imagine they'll be doing the same this year.
You never regret it when you fall in the water and you've got a safety team that are like, get out, we're shutting, go to bed, you're going to be all right. You're like,
cracking open that bar of Ritter Sports.
Crack open that Ritter Sports. Get that.
What I would say is ideally just complete it first time round so you don't have to pay.
Yeah.
I didn't want
that should be.
That's why you're still in your office now on Monday night going.
Yeah, I know. I do feel
and you're like, no big races. I'm just doing some local Bushy Park 5K for the next 3 years.
Homer Park run, Bushy Park, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Have you been? Have you got PB on that course?
I haven't got a PB on that course, no, because I used to live in East Dulwich, so I did the Dulwich Park one, which is like record breaking in terms of speed. So I think my PB's there. Not yet at Bushy though.
How many people turn up on a Saturday at Bushy?
Thousands, isn't there?
Right. Well, especially when was it? 20th or 20th? It was 25th anniversary, was it? I think of
that's right. Yeah.
Recently, and so there were people flying in from all over the world to do the anniversary race there. And I did it. The last time I did it was maybe a couple of weeks after that, and there was still, it must be verging on 1,000 people there on a Saturday, I'd say. Yeah.
I was there. It was the London Marathon weekend. I was in Finsbury Park.
Oh yeah.
And I was sharing a coffee with Paul Sinton Hewitt, the guy who started the whole thing.
Oh yeah.
Just a name drop there.
Gary, you still haven't got him on the podcast, so you can name drop him all they want. Right, we've got to let you go. Joe, thank you so much. So nice to meet you.
No, thank you both as well.
Keep in touch. We're big fans. Let us know if you do have any future adventures, and people will be able to find you. You're a very small niche market on Instagram, but what you do post is pretty cool as well. Thanks so
John.
much.
Thanks.
Take
care.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Bye. Thanks for tuning in. We love you. Thanks for listening. Please share this episode and the pod and share the love. Pop over to Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, subscribe, or even consider becoming one of our patrons. Thanks to X Miles, Precision Fuel Hydration, Phoenix Light UK, Harrier Trail Run, Protein Rebel for sponsoring this week's show. Here are the discount codes: T10 2025 for Shocks, T15 for Protein Rebel, T-Time 2025 for Precision Fuel Hydration, and T10 for Harrier Trail Running. Thank you all to your partners, patrons. All of those coming to the Ultras, we're getting lots of messages saying, see you at the Ultra. We can't wait to see you there. We couldn't do this without you and your ongoing support.
Whatever you're doing, let the trail rise to meet you and the wind always be on your back. Be kind to your future self, breathe and believe, and roll with the joy, and the miles will look after themselves. My name is Gary Thwaites.
And I'm Eddie Sutton.
And that was the Tea and Trails podcast.